Before we go into our interview today, I wanted to let everyone know we have a new sponsor for our Energy Question podcast, the U.S. Oil and Gas Association, or USOGA for short. First established in 1917, USOGA has been an effective and creative voice for the industry for more than a century now. USOGA is dedicated to educating the public, policymakers, and legislators at the federal, state, and local levels about the value of the domestic oil and natural gas industry. If you're in the industry and not currently a USOGA member, please consider joining the association as a way of helping it tell your story to the policymakers whose actions impact everything you do each and every day. You can start that process by contacting USOGA through its website, usoga.org. Thanks so much to USOGA for sponsoring the Energy Question podcast. And now on with our show.
Hello, welcome to the Energy Question with David Blackmon. I'm your host, David Blackmon, and my guest today is a gentleman that I've interviewed several times over the past year, Lars Carlstrom, who is the CEO of two ventures now in the renewable energy space, the battery space, Statevolt in the United States, and an Italy venture called Italvolt, excuse me. Got to get the name right here, Lars. How are you today? It's good to see you again. We just talked the other day, and I really appreciate you doing the podcast here. This is a terrific topic that I think everyone's going to be very interested in, with you mounting these two ventures in two very different countries and very different regulatory regimes and supply chain matters and everything. So before we get into the Q&A, why don't you take a couple of minutes to talk about Statevolt and Italvolt and what you're trying to accomplish with your business ventures?
Yes, thank you, David. Yes, in Italy, we have been on for 3 years now and developing a gigafactory, and we have a modular engineering, which we achieved during these 3 years. To build a gigafactory is very complicated. It's not like building a warehouse or an industry, a normal industry. This is a complicated engineering to achieve, and it's that complicated. And we started this, not many knew in Europe how to build this, even if there were many who said they knew, but they didn't know. So it's so we had a number of partners like ABB, Equans, and ACOM, and so on, who's been supporting the process. And we have finally came up with an engineering model which we can actually use anywhere in the world, more or less. It's a modular engineering which is adaptable to more or less any markets. And we are currently in Sicily, and where we are planning to build a factory outside Palermo. And also these factories are consuming massive amount of energy. And in our case, it's up to 1% of all energy in Italy. So you need to have a very substantial grid connection. And so we have actually a power plant just 100 meters away from the proposed site, which will support us with relatively green energy. It's actually fueled by natural gas, but in Europe it's considered to be a green energy resource. But we, on top of that, they are building a green cable from Tunisia, and with solar energy, which is actually anchoring some miles away from our factory or proposed site.
So the electricity will be coming in on an undersea cable?
Yes, and that's a project actually Italy is conducting together with the European Union. So it's quite exciting. So that could potentially also give us even greener energy propelled by solar power, which is very interesting for us. So this project's been going on, and we are hoping to be able to launch construction sometime in the next 6 months, and be in the first operational phase in 2026, and to ramp this up to full capacity around 35 gigawatt in sometimes 2030, 2031, and employ up to 3,000 people, and building firstly batteries for ESS, energy storage systems. And as you see, as the market now become more mature than it was when we started 4 years ago, it's more obvious that we need to balance the grid. We need to be able to store energy. We need to have this electric dream to become true, we need to have a lot of energy storage. And that's actually the key for everything. But even before we can see that we're going to have a significant fleet of EV cars, this has to happen first. So for us, this is a no-brainer. And also the profit for energy storage battery cells is higher. We're even looking into the whole system now also, not just building the battery cells, also building the whole system. So it's a quite exciting development. And we have a sister project in California called Statevolt, and it's in Imperial County, and not far from more famous Salton Sea, where you had some issues for sure, environmental issues. Unfortunately, this lake is drying out, and it pollutes the area with pesticides from the farms. Will be airborne. It become dust when the lake dries out, and it creates a lot of issues for kids, get asthma and all kind of diseases actually. So this is also a good opportunity to support the process to remediate the area. So it's a good opportunity for Imperial, which also is a area in decline, which actually was very prosperous in the 50s, 60s with hotels and luxury resorts and
real resort area.
Playground for the rich and famous.
It really was.
And it's not the case anymore. So it's one of the poorest areas of America. Even though when you're there, you don't feel it that way. It's people are extremely nice, and it feels very organized. I mean, for sure, you feel that it's not a prosperous area, but the opportunity is huge, as this is also now being renamed as the Lithium Valley of America, and it's one of the largest lithium assets in the world. Actually, is in Imperial, and the lithium there can now potentially be digested through a geothermal process, where actually digesting the geothermal energy, and at the same time in that process digesting this lithium in the process. So it's if this now will be successful, we're working together with a company called CTR, and we have an agreement with them on supply of lithium, and so this can be a hyper local concept. What we are now missing out on here is to have a refinery there, which we need to solve, because otherwise we need to send the lithium to China or somewhere else, which will kill the narrative. So it has to be a refinery at site, and then this is also quite big investment, up to $1 billion. So it's for a big refinery, and that's something we try to accomplish now together with a partner, to have it located in the area. And there are a number of companies there now into this lithium gold rush over there. So it's, and also General Motors and Stellantis have also invested in the CTR assets, and so there are a lot of things happening there. So the future for Imperial looks pretty bright, and they have a great support from the local county community. They are extremely helpful. They are like they are working in our company more or less, so they are extremely good. It's an amazing opportunity to work with these guys. They are really good. So and also in America we have the Inflation Reduction Act, which is a totally different thing than we accomplished in Europe. For sure there are great support in Europe also, but it's not centrally allocated in the way as in America. It's you have one government, and one government tells you how to do. In Europe you have dozens of governments, and they have different view on this, and it's not perfectly clear what to do and not to do. So it's
in Europe you also have this overlay of additional bureaucracy. Not you have the national governments, but then you also have the European Union. And all the programs and regulations.
It's a mess, and I think actually this is. I even discussed this a lot with representatives from the European Union, and they say, we know, but we have a 7-year decision time. So I mean, 7 years when you're competing with China, who have 1 week of decision time. So it's not that easy. So I'm concerned about Europe in that way, is that the bureaucracy is blocking the development and prosperity of Europe.
We talked the other day. You also mentioned you're really concerned about the future of the auto industry in Europe, right?
I'm extremely concerned. I think also European Union start to be very concerned. As you saw yesterday, they launched now investigation on these very cheap Chinese electric cars that are now flooding the
Right.
market.
Yeah.
And but I also pointed it out for them before. I said, because if a European car manufacturer is sending a car to China, he paid 25% in import tax. A Chinese car manufacturer sent to Europe, he paid 10%. So already here we have a disbalance. And then now they are worried in the European Union that, well, maybe if we are now put more tariffs on they might be also affecting European car manufacturers. They need to pay more for importing them to China. But we already pay more. We pay 15% more already. And it's a lot on a car. So it's
Right.
so it's so therefore it's I don't really understand this how this, well, the view is complicated, and potentially in the calculations it's also been made now by European Union is that the whole inflow of Chinese cars and can affect the automotive industry extremely bad. It can hit them with a 7 billion loss every year, and if you lose 7 billion a number of years, you don't have so much automotive industry left, and then you have tens of millions of people unemployed potentially, and then we have recession in Europe for a very long time, and so it's a huge problem, and therefore also pushing for, if we're now going to do this transition, then we need to go for it. We need to support it big time. We need to build a lot of factories. Still, we hardly have no factories in Europe anyway. Even if we've been on with this process for several years, there are still no factories in operation. Well, very few at least. And we don't have any supply chain, and all the minerals are already kidnapped by China. So it's so we are in a difficult situation. I'm very concerned about the ICE going out to the market in 2035. I don't think that will work out, to be honest.
Yeah.
Well, it can work out, but then you're potentially losing the industry also. So it's I think this is the politicians have not been really, how should I say, unaware or naive. I think that's probably the situation. I think
it's the same thing in the United States. I complain about
Yeah.
that all the time. But Mrs. von der Leyen did give a State of the Union speech here shortly after we talked the other day.
Yes.
Did anything she say, was anything encouraging to you in this regard?
It is, but still, yeah, it's good, the things that she's saying, but I'm still concerned, as we touched base on before, the bureaucracy. Maybe they make a decision, then it's going to take several years before it's in action.
Right.
And then we are lost anyway, because this goes very rapidly. And China is moving fast.
Oh man,
they're making a decision, and the decision is effective from tomorrow. So it's a different thing when you're a dictatorship in that way. You can just make a decision, and that's the way it is. In Europe, you're going to pass all these countries. It could be central government, European Union, and it takes years. And it's and these years will kill the industry. So I think. Well, in the way America is doing things now, I think it's probably they are already put limits against the inflow of Chinese cars and Chinese manufacturing in that way. I think we, for the sake of Europe, I think we need to collaborate with China to save the industry, because we are too late on it now. It's too late to reverse it now, as we should have done these things 4 years ago, and it didn't happen, and I don't understand how they couldn't see this coming. It was quite obvious what's going to happen, and the whole transition is only gaining China now. So it's I'm very concerned about the development, and I'm not sure how this will end. It has to be some serious change. Either you're fueling these initiatives in Europe big time and make sure that they be realized, and also need to shorten time for mining, for collecting minerals. Now it can take up to 20 years to open a new mine, for instance, and I mean, yeah, we are gone.
Yeah.
We are gone.
We complain a lot in the U.S. about our
minerals in 20 years. We need them tomorrow. So it's it's a big problem. So
well, we complain so much in the U.S. about our own bureaucracy and permitting issues, and Joe Manchin, of course, trying to speed all that up. But what you're saying basically is it's actually not nearly as bad in the United States as it is in Europe.
No, it's actually bad. So from that perspective, I'm concerned. Not to be too negative now, we are in Italy, and Actually, Italy is an opportunity also, even if the bureaucracy is massive over there.
Yeah.
But we also have the largest recovery fund in Italy, which is a great asset. So rightly used, we can actually gain a lot. We can have as good support as, or even better than you have in America from the recovery fund. But it also need that the government start to understand how things work, that they need to come up with value, because this money will not be allocated to Italy if Italy is not showing up projects that are in line with the green transition. So therefore, they cannot build racetracks or football arenas, which they thought before. It has to be projects which actually supporting the green transition, and we are such projects. I mean, if they use this rightly, then they can gain a lot, because this is, as I said, these funds will never arrive to Italy if they don't present the right projects to move forward. So it's a good opportunity, but it also depending on the government's will to make it happen. We are also active now in the energy storage space. Also, we start eyeing other opportunities in Southern Europe, in Eastern Europe, like former Eastern Europe, like Slovakia, and also in Serbia. So we are on with this, building this. The whole system for energy storage, which is a very interesting space, and it's been more and more clear, because if you compare to EV batteries, which has a long process with the car manufacturers to be approved, up to 2 years, and also a bit more risky, as you need to have responsibility. If one of these cells are exploding or caught fire or whatever, it can be a complicated situation later on. If something's happening in an energy storage container, it's not that difficult, it's not that dramatic. But if you are in heaven, like General Motors had, like happened also for General Motors, you had a car actually, when there started to be problems with the cells, and the car started caught fire or whatever, then it's
Right.
an issue. So for us, I think what we found out now, firstly, the great need for energy storage, and secondly, we have a higher profitability, and it's also a window where I see no end of the need for these cells, of these batteries. It's a huge opportunity, huge, big market. And also, as we are in Southern Europe, we're not too far away from Africa, where you have a lot of off-grid areas, which can actually be propelled by solar energy. And if you can store the energy there, you can actually do a lot of good things over there. So it's a good opportunity. So energy storage is, for us, is a very interesting way going forward.
So you've talk about your factories being technology agnostic, right? And one of the issues we've had in Texas, we've had a rapidly growing storage sector here in Texas, along with solar. And one of the issues that has kind of risen to the top here over the summer is the storage that's been installed here in Texas appears to have about a 3-hour cycle time. So it doesn't give you a lot of protection for a winter storm Uri like we had a couple of years ago, where we had blackouts for 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
Do you see that technology, that cycle time expanding? As the technology improves, obviously technology advances all the time.
Definitely, I think especially for America, because the situation in America with the grid is by far worse than Europe. I mean, the grid you have in America is very old and not capable at all, firstly, to support the massive amount of energy need for the EV fleet, but also, like you now described, what's happening in with these blackouts. That could be avoided with these with these battery parks being placed in the right position near your big cities, for instance. That will totally avoid the situation with blackouts. It's a great opportunity, and I think that will facilitate, and it's by far cheaper than rebuilding the grid you have over there also. So I mean, it's these battery parks can also reduce investment and cost for the authorities, and having those instead of rebuilding the grid, which is extremely costly.
What about sourcing talent? A business like you're building is going to have real challenges sourcing talent. You're in a good spot though in Southern California, I know, and I wonder also about Italy, where you're
We can start in America. We have a good collaboration with the universities. We are not so far away from San Diego, and so we are quite optimistic. And we're also focusing a lot on educating kids. I mean, kids, youngsters, 17, 18 years old, and to invite into the Battery Academy, which we are developing, which will also secure the future workers for the factory. And it's also an opportunity for these kids to have an education. They have a diploma from the Battery Academy. They will most of these kids in this segment will never go to the university, but here they have an opportunity to be someone, be recognized, and having a diploma from the Battery Academy. And we also securing the workers for the future battery production. And we're doing the same projects also in Italy. I think this is a really good opportunity, as we also the factory of this scale is around 3,000 people we need to hire. So it's a good opportunity for the society and also for the universities to interact together with us. We also have some parties also very highly qualified personnel, which is also something that is good for universities to be a part of. And so I think we are that's been the most important thing for us, is to contribute and make the social impact, and that's the driver for me, firstly, to do these projects, is to change the societies. And therefore, as I said before, they should be built in areas in decline where you can make a change.
The Battery Academy, that's I assume that's something you're developed in partnership with local universities.
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah, community colleges.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great concept. We've done similar things over the years. I was in the oil industry for a long time. We had similar programs with local community colleges in, play areas that were hot. Supply chain issues, we hear a lot about supply chain issues in the United States, and I assume there are probably similar challenges in Italy as well,
it's
right?
a huge challenge. And also, as in this case, Asia and especially China have already furnished their supply chain. And so it's a big issue, and to build the supply chain. On the other hand, we also have an opportunity to have companies co-locating with us. I mean, companies producing anodes or cathodes or whatever can actually build their facility close to our gigafactory, which are supporting this process big time. And that will also, our 3,000 jobs in the end can be 15,000 jobs also, if we are playing things right and attracting the right supply chain to co-locate together with us. So it's a massive opportunity in that way.
So you have this ready supply of lithium, right, around the Salton Sea that will be an evaporation operation. It's not a mine. Do you have a similar resource near your gigafactory location?
We have actually, well, there's a mine opening in Serbia by Rio Tinto, and it's in reasonable distance from Italy. So that's an opportunity. But also being in Sicily, we are very short way from Africa, where you have lithium assets as well. Here we need to be more cautious that this has been obtained in a reasonable ESG friendly way, as there are conditions in some parts of Africa which is not acceptable for teaming up with, and that could create issues for us. So it's so we need to be more cautious and understand the origin of these minerals, and as it could be a good opportunity, as many minerals are also in Africa. So it's a good opportunity, but we need to be cautious with the ESG standards to secure that they are certified and doing this in the right way.
China's been so aggressive globally, using the Belt and Road Initiative to lock up these resources. Do you see China making similar inroads in North Africa? I guess they probably haven't gotten around to that area yet.
They control Africa today, so it's for sure. So most of even if they're coming from Africa, it doesn't mean that the money end up in the hands of China. So it's so that's for sure. It's they've been very efficient, and they saw this very early on. I don't know how we can miss out on these things in Europe and in the US. It's quite surprising that we've been sleeping for such a long time. And if this is a part of the agenda to do this transition, the politicians should be aware of it. And I don't understand how they could be so naive and didn't pay attention to these things a decade ago. It's a mystery.
Well, it is, and of course, so much of it is these democracies with their processes and with the individual rights of the citizens and all these different stakeholders, it's just so much harder to move quickly than it is with a communist government in China, where the leaders can just say, we're going to do this and order people to do it without concern for a lot of the things we have to take care of. It's hard for me to envision a day where the US and Europe and Canada and the other Western democracies can ever really truly become more competitive with China in executing these things, just in terms of timing. A natural inclination would be to somehow partner with China on these projects in a more constructive way, but that doesn't seem to be happening, does it?
I think, David, you're on the right track, and that's what I've been starting advocating recently also. I was more harsh before and said we need to prevent this happening, but I see now we have no way out of it. The only way to get a piece of the cake is to collaborate, and that has to happen. We just need to realize we cannot just close it. We need to have a collaboration on this, and it's probably the most healthiest way to move forward. Otherwise, this will end in a very disastrous way. I think it's not good. A collaboration has to start in this industry now, and as it's a big transition in the not just in the way of transporting yourself. It's a transition in our whole lifestyle, so it's whole life really. But I think, as discussed, I totally agree with you. I'm a big fan of democracy, and I think it's the most precious we have. But I think the bureaucracy is always an enemy, because the bureaucracy is there for many people just to gain from, which is actually not gaining anyone. You're gaining a few who can earn money on it, and like in Italy, we have notaries, we have lawyers. They are profiting from this big time, and totally unnecessary things that could easily be replaced with the new technique that we have today, like the notary system, is extremely costly and create a lot of time losses, and it has to be just removed. I mean, we have bank IDs, and we have all these things which is so easy to replace the notary function with. So I think those kind of things we can easily work with and accelerate our prosperity. So I think those things we should pay attention to and make sure that we can do this in a different way. But it also goes to the European Union. It's also European Union itself is highly bureaucratic, and it has to has to change. It has to be revitalized.
Well, I tell you, we're running up against time. This is a fascinating conversation to me, and I hope we can link up again at sometime in the near future at a good inflection point for your company. I wish you the best of luck, and I know you're about to get on a plane, so also wish you safe travels here.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Great pleasure to be on your program. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And thanks to everyone for watching. Thanks to the Sandstone Group for hosting our podcast, our extraordinary producer, Eric Burrell, and our sponsors at the U.S. Oil and Gas Association. We couldn't do this without y'all. I'm David Blackmon, and that is all for now.